We've all been here, either bouncing off a larger opponent or brickwalling a smaller fighter. As a lightweight martial artist, I needed to know exactly how big of an opponent can I effectively push back, so I can do this and not this. Using the PowerKube and motion capture, I've calculated the exact size threshold where physics dictates you should change tactics. The front kick is one of martial arts' most versatile weapons, seen in many styles. But physics dramatically changes how it works against different sized opponents. The martial artist in me wants to know how effective is my kick, and the sports scientist in me knows how to find out. The question is, at what weight difference does the push kick become physically ineffective? And when it does, what should you do instead? The first step is to find out how much power and energy I can generate with my push kick. Using the PowerKube, I performed 60 maximum effort rear push kicks to find the best. The technique I'm using involves maximizing hip drive by swinging the arms down and raising onto the ball of the support foot. I aim to hit with the ball of the foot and with full extension. Now the PowerKube outputs two physics units which we can use. The first is kinetic energy in joules and the second is power in watts. Kinetic energy is a calculation of how much mass is moving and how quickly. Power is a calculation of how quickly that kinetic energy is transferred to the target. I break these down in more detail in my video analysing Eddie Hall's world record punch. My best kick produced 12,500 watts of power and 426 joules of energy. To complement the force data, I also analysed kick velocity using MoveAI's motion capture technology. With it, I discovered my best kick peaked at 10.2 meters per second and was moving at 7.94 meters per second at impact. If you've been watching my videos and you think, wow, that PowerKube is really cool, I wish I had one to test my own strikes. Well, you're in luck, because I'm now partnered with PowerKube. With my code WarriorCodex, you can get a 10% discount on any of their products. I'll also leave a link down below that'll take you directly to their website. For the push kick to be considered effective, it must meet two criteria. The first criteria is it must sufficiently displace my opponent so that I either gain distance or I knock them off balance. What I consider that to be would be they take the kick and they take an exaggerated step backwards. This is about 50 centimeters of displacement. The second would be they take the kick and they change stances to recoil and recover from the kick. Once again, 50 centimeters of backwards movement. The second of these criteria is that I myself mustn't be knocked off balance or displaced the same amount. If I was in my stance and I throw my kick and I return to stance, great, effective kick. However, if I kick and get knocked backwards through the recoil of the opponent, once again, I've moved 50 centimeters backwards, that would be considered ineffective. Same thing, throw the kick, maybe I put my stance back, but I stumble backwards and change stances. Again, I've moved back that 50 centimeters of distance. So, not effective. Now, in terms of our opponent, we're going to look at three different scenarios to measure how effective this kick is. Our first scenario is the opponent is standing still and they take the kick. Our second is they are stepping forwards. And the third is an aggressive push step forwards. With scenarios 2 and 3, we need to know how quickly the opponent is moving forwards. Using my record kick, I measured that it took 650 milliseconds to land. Using Canova, I calculated at 650 milliseconds, scenario 1 is still moving forwards at 0.18 meters per second, and scenario 2 is moving at 0.47 meters per second. Our three velocities, 0, 0.18 and 0.47 meters per second, will be applied to our hypothetical opponents at 60, 70, 80, 90 and 100 kilos to see how the kick performs. With all that out of the way, it's time for a whole bunch of maths. Lucky for you, I've already done it. Bam! Welcome to the calculator. For the next couple of minutes, I'm going to run through all of this data for clarification and understanding. If you would just like to hear the results, then jump to the timestamp on the screen now. Okay, jumping into the calculator now. Our first blue fields that we're looking at here are the data input fields for my own results. So these 426, 12, 501 are my PowerKube results, and the 7.94 is my motion capture velocity. 63 is my current weight. The red fields are my opponent, so 60 kilos is our first opponent, and then moving forward at 0.18 or 0. Negative because they're moving the opposite direction to what we are. And then our yellow fields are the additional fields that we can input. So step length, 50 centimeters, we calculated that from the footwork earlier. And then the coefficient of restitution, 0.4. 0 meaning fully absorbs the kinetic energy, 1 meaning fully reflect. 0.4 is roughly the equivalent of braced abdominal muscles. Now the green fields are the fields we're actually interested in. Effective kicking mass, how much effective mass did we generate based on our kinetic energy? Impact duration, how quickly was that energy transferred to the PowerKube? And the impact velocity, we know that because that was recorded from our motion capture earlier. Now collision results, the main ones we're looking at, the opponent's final velocity and the kicker's final velocity. In this case, for our 60 kilo opponent, they're moving at 2 meters a second and I'm rebounding at -1, so rebounding 0.13 meters per second. All right, forces and accelerations is next. We're looking at the amount of acceleration that's imparted to the opponent. So based on how quickly they're moving backwards and based on how quickly that's applied, what kind of acceleration do they expect to feel? And then based on that, how many G-forces are they going to experience? We can then determine what the actual force output of the kick was equivalent to for both the opponent and the kicker, because equal and opposite reactions, as well as the deceleration that the kicker receives and the amount of G-forces that their leg will experience from this kick. Okay, now the opponent recovery section. First thing we'll note is this 0.15 seconds. That's how long it takes for an instinctive balance recovery step if you were to lose your balance or trip over. Based on that, and based on the speed the opponent's moving at, how far do they move before they can take that first step? In this case, 30 centimeters. Now, based on the deceleration of them stepping backwards and recovering their balance, how long will that take? And how many steps should they take based on our half-meter example? So that's 1.7 steps. And then in this case here, combining our 1.7 steps and our 30 centimeters, we'll end up moving the opponent back 1.15 meters. Now, let's find the exact threshold where physics dictates that my push kick becomes physically ineffective. Now, the first thing to highlight is our second criteria, maintaining balance. As far as I can tell from reviewing my footage, with correct technique and training, the recoil can be absorbed and none of the scenarios caused enough disruption to unbalance or move me more than 50 centimeters. There is a whole category here that needs testing and I'll make that a future experiment. Against our 60 kilo opponent, across the 3 scenarios, we have the following results. We accelerate them backwards at 2.04, 1.91 and 1.69 meters per second. This causes them to move back 115, 108 and 96 centimeters. This means that all 3 kicks are effective at moving the opponent backwards. Against our 70 kilo opponent, we see similar results. We accelerate them backwards at 1.8, 1.66 and 1.44 meters per second, causing backwards movement of 101, 94 and 81 centimeters. Due to this being more than our 50 centimeter threshold, all 3 kicks are still effective. At 80 kilograms, we are still imparting significant velocity and causing enough backwards movement to make the kick effective. Against the 90 kilogram opponent, we are starting to see less movement, dropping down to 82, 74 and 60 centimeters. 90 kilograms is also the tipping point where all 3 scenarios have greater acceleration to the kicking leg than to the opponent. Finally, our 100 kilo opponent. Even at this weight, we are still getting significant pushback to consider the kick effective. The third scenario here only just scrapes in at 53 centimeters. Also, the acceleration to my leg is 2.6 times what the opponent receives. This is the point where I would say the risk to reward is not worth it. Now, these are hypothetical opponents using physics to give us an idea. There will always be other variables at play which limit the kick's effectiveness, such as the kick slipping off of the opponent's moving faster, lowering the center of gravity, leaning forward, or anchoring their back foot, just to highlight a few. So what happens when physics tells us the push kick is no longer effective? This is when we switch the intent from pushing to snapping with the same front kick. The reason this works is because these 2 kicks use different fundamental physics. The push kick uses impulse, which is force times time, to maximize opponent displacement, while the snap kick uses instantaneous force to maximize damage. Because of these different physics, the execution changes significantly. The snap kick technique involves rapid chamber, explosive extension, and immediate retraction. An added benefit of this technique is that due to less mass being used, there is less disruption to the kicker's balance and recovery is quicker. The goal of the snap isn't displacement, it's concentrated impact to vulnerable targets such as the liver or the solar plexus. This technique works on all opponents regardless of size. What I found from this experiment is that the push kick loses effectiveness around the 1.5 times bodyweight mark. This is based on my personal technique and power output. If you stick to 1.3 to 1.5 times bodyweight, your push kick should remain effective. Above this point, stick with the snap technique only. The key is developing both of these techniques in training, so you can switch between them based on the relative size to your opponent. This is just one example of how understanding biomechanics can dramatically improve your martial arts performance. The PowerKube reveals hidden insights that traditional training often misses. Let me know in the comments which martial arts techniques or concepts you would like to see tested. I read them all and I use them to plan for future videos. If this video helped you understand the science behind your martial arts, give it a like and subscribe so you don't miss my next technique breakdown. And be sure to share this video with your fellow martial artists.